Now, I know I'm pretty late on this, but hope you guys are all doing well. Welcome back to another league video. This being the breakdown, my thoughts of the last 9 weeks of LCS. Some crazy things happening, some crazy great things, some very surprising things as well, some controversial things throughout this split. I hope you guys all enjoy. At the end of the video, going to give you guys my first round predictions for playoffs. I'm only going to predict the first round because, well, predicting second and third rounds can be a bit tricky when it comes to drawing what information recently is actually going to be valid for these playoff matchups. I will say one thing, between LEC and the LCS, all the playoff matchups seem to be pretty close, but especially when it comes to the LCS, I really don't know what to expect. So I'm going to make some bold calls out there. You guys, of course, can leave your thoughts down below about the crazy things happening throughout this split. The first of which has to be talked about, right? That being the 100 Thieves roster, a complete and utter letdown. No one is denying it now. A last place finish on a roster improvement on paper from last year's Worlds running roster. We thought they were, of course, going to be a top 3 team. I think just about everyone in their right mind thought so as well. And something's certainly going to be fixed on that roster. Something was very apparently wrong. No one really knew the key problem on that roster because there were so many, and now confirmed by Nadeshot as well in one of their latest 100 Thieves episodes, they will be making changes between spring split and summer split. What those changes will be, will they be enough? That is the question in the air, because what can they possibly change to fix what looked like such a broken roster? But hopefully, at the very least, right, something we will never see again is a Worlds tier roster like this performing so poorly for an entire split. And when you think about it, this is a team, shockingly enough, that world tier roster on paper, the only team in the LCS. All the other teams throughout this last weekend were actually still in contention to make playoffs besides 100 Thieves. Absolutely amazing what they could not do, and pretty incredible to actually make that statement in the first place. A few other teams I want to talk about. COG, not too much. A long-term team. I still think PoE is one of the better players I've seen this split, and then especially when he has a team behind him, I'm very, very sure in the future they'll make improvements as well. I'm still faithful on this roster, okay? COG alongside Clutch, 2 non-playoff teams I had potentially in that 6th place spot. So unfortunately, news for that roster. And I think, again, if these guys, especially that being PoE, we saw in these last few matchups, some very defeated looks on their face, as should be, right? A pretty bad split for a team that was hopeful for playoffs. Either way, I think improvements can be made to both these rosters, that being COG alongside Clutch. Clutch was a team with immediately a strong start to the split, right? A team that I thought was definitely, after the first 2 to 3 weeks, going to be making those playoffs, and then an immediate fall off right back to what some people thought this team was going to be. I think the overall issue here was not necessarily individual players, although we could name a few. Demonte still has some true potential. Piglet had his good games, right? You give this guy Aurelia, he's probably going to win most of those games. If you don't, though, we've seen some struggles across the entire lineup there with decision making, as we could say for many teams out there. And it seemed to me the best way I could actually put it throughout the entire split, Clutch Gaming could never really put the final push through when it came to games. They had close games, they just could not finish, which was, again, a problem that many teams had. Especially when you look at these next 2 teams, we've already talked about 100 Thieves. They've already confirmed their roster changes will be made. We just don't know which players will go where. The other team out there that had trouble finishing would be Optic Gaming. They also had a few roster changes, but of course, between Meteos and Dardoch. They seem to finally finalize their jungler in Meteos, but still, I think we all can agree Optic Gaming can replace a player, if not a couple players, and make some improvements. I'm not going to name names. I think there is certainly one player on Optic that could be changed out that had an overall overwhelming pretty poor split so far. Those 2 teams, and I think a lot of teams will be making changes, if not strategically in the player base as well. 2 teams, that being 100 Thieves and Optic Gaming, who had some of the best sub 15-minute performances in the entire split of the entire LCS, but could not finish these games out. These are teams that, if they can figure out their late game and decision making, especially when it comes to Optic Gaming, they are certainly playoff contending teams, in my opinion. And I feel confident saying that because it came down to just small decisions, small 1-game wins, 1-game close losses that decided our top 6 teams this split. We had 6 teams all within a game or 2 of each other to decide those last 2 spots. Let's not forget that. So yes, when it comes to Clutch, Optic, CLG, so on and so forth, it was a 1-game difference, one maybe small decision that actually changed them going to playoffs or not going to playoffs. And also, very lastly, what I took from the last 9 weeks of this split, an Echo Fox that was going off, striving off those 1-1 weekends, right? Oh, you know, you can't go 0-2. They then made some roster changes. They go 0-2 back-to-back weekends, and we thought they were completely done. They come back these last 2 weekends as the single best looking team. Yes, your top 3 teams still look very dominant besides Team Liquid, so I think Cloud9 and TSM still looked very good, especially TSM. We'll talk about them in a bit here. Echo Fox, though, taking down your number 1 and number 2 teams. I'd say your number 1 and number 2 teams by a considerable amount. There's a pretty big fall off, I would say, after those 2 teams being Cloud9 and Liquid. Echo Fox win 3 of their last 4, and they managed to make playoffs and scrape by, and I think they do so just great timing. Do I trust them for playoffs is a completely different question, and I guess you could say very lastly, the team I want to talk about would be TSM, winning 11 of their last 12, the single most dominant team in the back half of the split alongside a Cloud9. They are looking tremendous, but let's break down our playoff predictions here. I'm going to predict the first round for all of you, and what I just said about Echo Fox and TSM, I might take back a few of those things too. You'll see. So for the first round predictions, I want to do an upset. You know, LEC wise, I didn't really choose too many upsets out there. I felt kind of bad. I'm going to take Echo Fox over TSM, and let me explain myself as well, because yes, this decision on paper literally makes no sense. Let me give you guys your arguments of why you probably chose TSM. Obviously the 2-0 head-to-head, right? They have 2 wins over Echo Fox throughout this season. Arguably best of ones. You really can't take too much away from those. I'll argue the other side in a second here. A 2-0 head-to-head, as well as these last 4 wins for TSM. I believe a majority of them for sure have come in sub 35 minutes, which was the main problem we had with TSM this split, right? The longest going team in terms of game time of the entire LCS, not looking too promising on paper. And of course, although these last 4 games, I think a lot of them were actually sub 30 or sub 35 minutes, they're looking incredibly strong. And on top of that, a win over Team Liquid. And then like my last point as well, they've won 11 of their last 12. Why, Jake, would you doubt them? Now, I want to pick an upset. I think this is the upset to pick because FlyQuest Golden Guardians, it's such a close matchup. Either one you pick is not really going to be an upset. Yes, FlyQuest is probably a favorite there, but still, if you pick Golden Guardians, no one's going to be like, oh, super surprised. If Echo Fox win, though, that's a pretty big surprise. So let me explain myself. So yes, Echo Fox is 0-2 in the recent head-to-head against TSM. Both those games, though, went super late, 38+ minutes and 50+ minutes in those head-to-head matchups, and best of ones are not best of fives. We seriously do not know what to expect. Yes, you probably would take the experience of TSM in the best of 5 for that slight advantage, but when it comes down to it, it's a bit of a mystery what these teams can actually do when it comes to best of 5, so I'm banking on that bit of mystery. And yes, TSM winning 11 of their last 12. You look at Echo Fox, though, making sheer improvements over the past 4 weeks, right? Especially ever since weeks, I would say 1 through 5. I think Hakuo has made some improvements there. Maybe not too big of improvements, but a guy like Solo as well, I think has been doing a great job for this team. If Phoenix can make the right engagements, the right decision making for this roster as well, yes, he takes a lot of risks out there. I think they certainly do have a chance. And you look at TSM, right? Recency wise, they've had some shorter games, but you look at games against Optic, games against Hunter Thieves, where they make those late game indecisions and they push those games very, very close against teams who are not notorious for actually being good in the late game. That being Hunter Thieves, that being Optic, both those wins could have easily been losses. So I think TSM is a bit hyped up here. Yes, they should be the far and away favorite, but I do think Echo Fox have a chance. They've beaten Team Liquid, they've taken down Cloud9 recently. This is a team who has a chance to take a game, maybe 2, maybe the series. It's a risky play, okay? And then very lastly and very fastly as well, I will be taking FlyQuest over Golden Guardians. Like I said previously, should be a very close matchup. Either way is not going to be too huge of an upset. When it comes to what I've seen personally over the past 4 weeks, I still think both teams have actually struggled, especially when it comes to Golden Guardians. If they did not have this last weekend a game advantage to go through to playoffs, I likely would have actually chosen a CLG or maybe even Optic over them. I did choose Golden Guardians. I did choose Echo Fox. I only chose Golden Guardians because they had that 1 game win advantage. When it comes down to it, what I've seen so far, I think GGS has a heavy reliance on Hanser being fed and actually snowballing the game. When it comes to FlyQuest, yes, you have a few key factors here. Wild Turtle and Pobelter, I think they have a few more options of who can actually snowball and feed themselves into a win. But with that being said, you've seen the highs and lows of Wild Turtle, whether he's doing well or whether he's doing very poorly, can certainly actually decide how this match or how this series does go. I think I'll be taking FlyQuest here, though, for that reason. Of course, the series can go either way, but I'm going to take FlyQuest here over Golden Guardians. And then very lastly, I think either way, though, your top 3 teams are by far and away your favorites, and 2 of those top 3, that being Liquid, Cloud9, TSM, should be in the grand finals just about no matter what. When it comes down to the grand finals, though, I think experience and maybe a playoff play of the game, right? We've seen a terrible Liquid, not a terrible Liquid, but a lackluster Liquid these past 2 weekends, and now it's time to ask ourselves, when it comes to best of fives, you have to favor these guys. These are titans out there, and did they play us all, right? Did they actually not play to what they attuned to usually throughout these past 2 weekends? Have they kind of, you know, slipped under the seams, slipped under the radar on purpose to play these teams the way they wanted to? We're going to find out what Liquid actually shows up this weekend. As always, I hope you guys all enjoy. My name is Jake. I'll be back here next Monday breaking down the playoffs and, of course, who has taken the MSI spot. And until next time, guys, take care.